Today we'll work on fluidity of our arm movements. For years I refused to teach this subject because belly dance is about the hips, not the arms. So I always laughed at the emphasis on the Oriental arms as a retro concept. The more oriental your arms are, the more stiff and the more outdated they look. And there was another reason why I never addressed this until recently. And that's because I actually have very little to say on this subject. But I will risk assuming that you may be interested in hearing my idea. I have to use idea in the singular here because it's really just one idea, but a good one. So at some point I started paying attention to the fluidity of arms in belly dance and started annoying my students with suggestions and rants about stiff arms. And as I insisted that they implement my one idea, I noticed that their progress was quite remarkable. So it's a trick, an easy fix, and we'll play with it today. But first, here comes a rant about the typical instructional approaches to arms in belly dance. So I'll rant first, then I'll explain my method, and then we'll practice some combinations involving arm patterns. When I was a belly dance beginner many years ago, and maybe when you were a belly dance beginner, the belly dance arms I was taught were pretty much an assortment of frames like this, or simple dynamic paths like this. It was mostly about keeping your arms contained and getting them out of the way of your hips, and very little about using your arms to enhance expressivity of your dance, using them as part of your body language, which always tells a story. Because if you're not telling the story with your dance, your audience is reading their story into whatever you're doing anyway on stage. Also, when it comes to technique of using your arms, there are two approaches you most commonly encounter. First is following the patterns of classical dance forms, such as ballet, with particular angles and distance of your arms from your body and your center line. It's a useful approach, but unfortunately, to my eye at least, the classical arms lack the organic fluidity that you have in your hips or your spine if you belly dance. So to me, this often looks like a clash between organic movement down there and contrived frames and patterns of the arms. The second approach to teaching belly dance arms consists of vague visualizations, such as, for instance, feel the movement of your arm starting in your lower back, or feel that this movement comes from your core, or the most offensive in my book visualization, using breath or energy. Feel that your breath flows from your chest through your arm to your fingertips, or feel the energy flowing from your shoulder to your wrist. These visualizations are called upon to battle stiff or limp arms looking disconnected from your body, but unfortunately they're not really helpful. Here I make a deep, soulful breath, and I believe the energy is flowing, it's flowing, but for some reason my arm right here is performing a limp, disconnected and undecided motion. So what's my signature quick fix? You may already know it if you're studying with me in recent years. If not, here it is. I ask you to do two things on any arm movement. One, perform any arm movement with the articulation of snake arms. I know it sounds bizarre, but I will explain. Two, support each arm movement with your upper body or spinal trajectories, such as arching your spine or rotations, especially the coordination we usually describe as the chest figure 8. And I will ask you to do one more thing as an optional element to evade the trap of classical arms. Instead of going from point A to point B through your classical arm path lying farther from the body, always bring your hand to your chest before extending them in any direction. So instead of going from A to B, we will go from A to B. Instead of going through A to B, we will go from A to B.